If you ever find an old cassette tape in a dead person's house, do not press play, not even once, because some voices don't stay in the past. Some voices wait for you to listen, and then they learn your name. My name is Sarah. I am 26 years old. And 3 months ago, I found my mother's voice trapped inside a plastic box the size of my palm. I want to tell you exactly what happened, in order, because if I don't say it out loud, I think it will for now. Please, just listen to the whole thing before you decide I'm crazy. By the end, I think you'll understand why I can't stop looking over my shoulder. Part 1. The empty house my mother died in March. Cancer. Slow, then fast, the way the doctors always warn you it will be. I was with her at the end, holding her hand in a hospital room that smelled. Her last words to me were soft, almost a whisper. She said, "Sarah, don't listen to anything that sounds like me if I'm not really there." I thought it was the medicine talking. She was on so much MO. She said strange things all week about shadows in the corner, about a man standing by the window who wasn't there, about a song she kept hearing that nobody else could hear. One night, she woke up GA. I didn't understand what she meant. I still don't, not fully, but I understand enough now to be afraid. After the funeral, it fell on me to clean out her house. I'm an only child. My father left when I was young, and it was always just me and Mom. In that small house on Maple Row with the creaky third S, everything smelled like her perfume, like old paper, like dust settling on furniture that hadn't been moved in decades. Her reading glasses were still sitting on the arm of the couch, folded neatly, W closed to donate, furniture to sell, photographs to keep. It was slow, heavy work, the kind that makes your chest hurt, even when your hands are just folding sweaters. Some days I got through 3 boxes. Some days I sat on the floor of her bedroom and cried. On the 5th day, I went up into the attic. I hadn't been up there since I was a kid, maybe 10 years old, playing hide and seek with a cousin who has long since stopped speaking to the family. Yet there was a smell up there too, something under the dust, something faintly sweet and a little bit rotten, like flowers left too long in stale water. I started opening the boxes one by one. Old baby, see a box of my father's old vinyl records, which surprised me. I thought she'd thrown out everything of his the day he left. And then, near the back wall, tucked behind a rolled-up rug that smelled like inside, sitting on a bed of faded red velvet, was a single cassette tape. No label. No writing anywhere on it. Just a plain black cassette, the kind you'd find in a bargain bin at a thrift store. But it wasn't dusty like everything else in that attic. It looked clean, almost new. Like someone had placed it there recently. Even though the box around it looked like it had been sealed for 20, it looked like the tape had simply appeared there, resting, waiting. I don't know why, but I picked it up and held it to my chest for a moment, the way you'd hold something precious. Something told me I should have left it there. I know that now. I think somewhere underneath all my grief, some small animal part of me already knew that too, and I ignored it because grief makes you deaf to your own. I didn't have a cassette player. Nobody does anymore. So I drove to 3 different thrift stores before I found an old boom box, dusty and covered in stickers from bands that broke up before I was born. That night, I sat on the floor of my apartment with the boombox in front of me, the tape already loaded inside. My hands were shaking a little, which felt strange for something so small. It was just that at first, there was only static, the hiss of old tape running through old machinery, that gray sound like rain on a tin roof. Then, slowly a voice came through. My mother's voice. Soft, warm. Exactly, Sarah, the voice said. My sweet girl, if you're listening to this, then I'm already gone, aren't I? I'm sorry. I want more time. I always wanted more time with you. I started crying immediately. It felt like a gift, like she had left me one more conversation, hidden away for me to find when I needed it most. The voice continued, talking about small things, how proud she was of me, how she The tape ran for about 10 minutes before it clicked off on its own, the reel stopping with a soft thud. I sat there in the dark for a long time afterward, holding the boombox like it was a living th the next evening. I wanted to hear her voice again. I made tea, sat on the floor in the same spot, and pressed play, already smiling before the static even started, already bracing myself to cry the G. Sarah, the voice said. My sweet girl, did you sleep well last night? You always used to toss and turn when you were anxious about something. I could always tell, even when you were a teenager in T, I had tossed and turned the night before. Actually, no way I had fallen asleep on the floor, deeply, dreamlessly the best sleep I'd had in weeks. That didn't match. But more than that, the tape. I told myself I was misremembering. Grief does strange things to memory. Maybe I had just forgotten a section. Maybe the tape was longer than I thought, and I hadn't listened all the way through the phi. I know you found the wooden box in the attic. I know you drove to 3 stores looking for something to play me on. You always were stubborn like that. Even as a little girl, remember the time I hadn't thought about it in 20 years, hadn't thought about it since it happened, actually, and yet the memory came rushing back whole and complete the second the voice mentioned it, like a door as my hands went cold. The tape clicked off again, exactly 10 minutes in. Same as before, the click sounding almost polite, like a door closing gently instead of slamming. I didn't sleep that night. IS. Part 4. I try to explain it away in the morning. Sunlight helps. It always does. Fear that feels enormous at 3 in the morning shrinks down to something manageable once the sun comes up and the nobody could record onto an old cassette tape and place it inside a sealed box in an attic that hadn't been touched in years, matching my private thoughts and unspoken memories word for word. I called instead. Some strange, hopeful part of me wanted to believe it really was magic. That my mother had found some way to reach me from beyond, to keep talking to me, to keep being my mother even after it felt silly, even as I typed the search terms into the microfilm computer. Most of what came up was nothing. Obituaries, church bake sale announcements, a decades-old article about a house fire too. The article was thin on details, the kind of vague small-town reporting that leaves more questions than answers, but mentioned a woman named Eleanor Voss who had, according to neighbors, become whipped before that, though curiosity got the better of me one more time. I found the old address listed for Eleanor Voss in a city directory from decades ago, and I drove past it on my lunch break the next then. In the last year of her life, something changed. She stopped coming outside during the day. Her lights would be on at strange hours, 3 in the morning, and Walter's late wife used to heat. Then Eleanor was gone. Found her in the kitchen one morning. They said though nobody in this neighborhood ever believed the official word on how it happened. And the girl, he shook his head slow. Part 5. The voice learns my name. That night's recording started the same way. Static, then her voice. Sarah, it said, you called Denise today. She doesn't remember me telling her anything. There's no possible way. Unless it was somehow inside my life in a manner I couldn't understand or explain. You're scared now, the voice continued, and something about its tone had changed. It was still I had prayed exactly that, more than once in the darkest weeks after the diagnosis, when I understood for the first time that she was actually going to die and there was nothing anyone could do about doesn't that feel good to hear? Doesn't that feel like exactly what you needed? That was too much. I reached for the stop button, my hand hesitating over it for one long, terrible second, some deep. I threw the tape and the boombox into a garbage bag that night, tied it shut in 3 separate knots. and put it out on the curb before I could talk myself out of it. Part 6, it comes back. Frida, I had watched the garbage truck take it away myself, standing in my window with my morning coffee, feeling relieved as it disappeared down the street with a hydraulic groan, feeling, for the first time inside, the boombox and the tape completely undamaged, like nothing had ever happened to them. No crushing, no compacting, not even a dent from the truck's mechanism. I should have thrown in a rib, but something about finding it on my doorstep, untouched, waiting for me like a loyal dog that had somehow found its way home across an impossible distance, made me feel like fighting it was Pointle. I carried the bag inside. I didn't unpack it right away. I let it sit in my closet for almost 2 weeks, and during those 2 weeks, strange things started happening around my apartment. Small affairs I would hear, very faintly at the edge of sleep, a sound like a cassette tape rewinding, the little whirring clicks of the reels turning backward, coming from somewhere inside the walls, or maybe for another night. I woke at exactly 3:17 in the morning, a time that would come to matter very much later, to the smell of my mother's perfume filling my bedroom, so strong and so specific that for one I started sleeping with the lights on. I started avoiding my own apartment, staying late at work, go to my friend Priya's place instead of going home most nights. But apartments cost money, and Eve. Part 7. Priya doesn't believe me until she does. I told Priya everything one night over wine at her kitchen table, half expecting her to tell me I needed therapy, which, honestly, might have been her grandmother, she told me, used to tell a story about a haunted radio back in the old country, something that would speak in the voices of the dead and slowly reveal that it knew everything about replace someone how. I asked my mouth dry. Priya shrugged, uncomfortable, wrapping both hands around her wine glass like it could warm something in her that had gone cold. The stories never really, they just said, don't feed it. Don't give it your attention. Don't let it keep learning, because every time you listen, you're handing it another piece of the puzzle, and eventually it has enough peace. I laughed it off at the time, mostly because I needed to laugh at something, needed the fear in my chest to loosen even for a second, needed this to still be the kind of story you tell over wine. And tea the next morning, I asked Priya if her grandmother was still alive, if maybe she could tell me more of the old story, anything at all that might help. Priya went quiet again and told me her grandma's small comfort, but I held on to it anyway. Part 8, trying to end it. I bought a hammer. That sounds almost funny now, writing it down. Going to a hardware store specifically to buy a hammer to kill. I did not stop until my arm was tired and sweat had soaked through the back of my shirt, and my kitchen looked like a crime scene of black plastic shards. Then I gathered every piece into a metal buck. Part 9. The voice doesn't need the tape anymore. I lay frozen in bed, listening. The static was faint but unmistakable, coming from the direction of my kitchen. The same room where I had smashed tea, it was coming from the radio on my microwave. The little digital clock radio that came built into the appliance, the one I never used, the one that had sat silent and unplugged in setting mode since I'm so close now, Sarah. I'm so close to being exactly what you need. Just a little more. Just a little longer. You're not my mother, I said, my voice cracking, speaking out loud to an appliance, and soon there won't be a difference. Soon you won't want there to be. And Sarah, I don't need the tape anymore. I never really needed it. It was just a door. Now that you've let me in, I can knock on it. Part 10, Priya's phone. I didn't tell Priya about the microwave right away. I think some part of me was ashamed, the way you're ashamed of a wound that keeps reopening no matter how carefully you ban. That's why I'm calling. That was the day I understood this wasn't just about me anymore, wasn't contained inside my apartment or my grief or my family's history. It was spreading outward, the way I told her about my mother, about the funeral, about the exhaustion of clearing out a house full of someone else's whole life. I told her carefully in the most normal-sounding way I could manage. For about 4 days, I let myself believe it completely, and those 4 days were the closest thing to peace I'd had since the funeral. Then Dr. Reyes called me herself 2 days after our second day.